Hi everyone, it's Squid the Cowgirl, aka Sydney, and today we're going to be talking about a very interesting topic, and that is how to strike it rich in the horse industry. So if this is something you're interested in learning more about, or you don't know a lot about, stick around and we're going to be talking about stories, personal experiences of mine, and we're going to be talking about what it is to be rich in the horse industry, because it takes a lot. So I think the first thing we need to break down is what it means to be rich. Okay, so define rich. Rich, if we talk about it in everyday terms, is usually monetary richness. Like you have a lot of money, you are influential, and you have a lot of power, right? Money equals power usually. And that is true in most cases, but I would say in the horse industry, striking it rich is one of the hardest things to possibly do. In a monetary aspect. I think if you are looking to become influential and powerful in the horse industry, I think you need to throw away all notion that you're going to be a fucking millionaire working in the horse industry, because it is very hard to make that kind of money if you don't already come from money. And I'm not saying it's completely impossible to quite literally strike it rich in the horse industry, because there are many people who have success stories of becoming really powerful and really rich in the horse industry, but it does take a lot. And I think almost more often than not, if you become rich in the horse industry, it usually means you spent a lot of money in the horse industry previously to making money. Now, the kind of richness that I think of when I work in the horse industry is I think about knowledge. I think about the love and passion for the sport and for the animals. And then I also like to think about the connections you have or influence you may have in the horse world. So let's talk about knowledge first, because I think this is a really important one. So you can be the richest human on the planet and not know jack shit about horses. Knowledge is super important when you're taking care of these animals. You don't want to go and do something not knowing what the hell you're doing. You are dealing with a living, breathing, wonderful creature. Like, you do not want to harm them in any way. So I would say knowledge is the first step to becoming rich in the horse industry. And the reason for this being is it's going to give you a lot of opportunities to meet a lot of different people and experience a whole lot of different things. So luckily, I was fortunate enough to start riding when I was 5 years old, and I continued that on all the way up until now, where I'm presently riding and doing things in the horse industry. But I wasn't always professionally working in the horse industry. I always did it for fun. I never really considered or thought about doing it as a career path or choice until I was 20 years old during COVID, and I was like, shit, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. And then I got back into horseback riding after having a break during college, and I just fell even more in love with the sport, and I realized I was like, I want to kind of make a career out of this for myself. So then I chose to find a job at the barn that I grew up riding at, and the rest is history. Now I've been working in the horse industry for 5 years. So I knew a lot about grooming and horseback riding, like riding and stuff, prior to working in the horse industry. But because I had this connection of knowing the owners of this barn that I grew up riding at, I had a long-standing relationship with them, and they knew a lot about me and vice versa. So when I asked for a job, I was thinking, okay, I'm going to be mucking stalls for a living just on the weekend as a side hustle, kind of just to get my foot in the door and kind of understand what things go on. And they told me, hey, you actually seem like you would be a really good lesson instructor. Do you want the position? And I was like, holy shit. Zoom in on my face, holy shit. I was like, there's no way they're offering me this kind of job. Like, I have no previous knowledge or experience doing this. So I was quite literally terrified of accepting that position. And mind you, it was lead line, lunge line kids. It wasn't anything super duper crazy. I wasn't teaching people how to jump 3-foot courses or anything like that. So I felt all right about it. And there was plenty of training involved in me getting that position. I think by watching and by doing is the biggest thing, is the biggest way you're going to learn how to do things in the horse industry. I've met so many people over the years who have kind of always done the same thing I've done, which is just ride for fun, for pleasure, and they eventually find themselves working in the horse industry one way or another, be it mucking stalls, feeding, horse care, and then eventually sometimes people even get into training other people how to ride, which is kind of like a really beautiful full circle moment. And I really reflect on that a lot, of like how I was 5 years old, lunge lining and lead lining with my instructor, and then eventually I graduated into actually teaching kids the same age that I was when I started doing the same thing. So it's kind of like this inherited knowledge of information that you acquire, and expertise in whatever field you decide to follow in the horse industry. Now obviously that's a little different. If you become a vet and stuff, you got to go to school for that. But majority of people that are in the horse industry don't necessarily have a degree for working in the horse industry. So I think it's a really good, if you already have that like knowledge of riding and stuff, I think it's a really good opportunity to kind of use your skills if that's something you're interested in getting into professionally. Always stay hungry for more knowledge, right? You want this richness and knowledge so that you can put it on your resume and say, hey, I know how to do this. Or you feel confident doing something. Do it over and over and over again until you almost master it. But don't think you've fully mastered it. Think that you've come very far in understanding something, but there's always a different way of doing something or understanding it. Because I think that's also where a lot of people fail in the horse industry, is they get stuck in their ways of doing something and they don't really want to expand or learn. I think another piece of advice with knowledge is try something new. Go out there and investigate, to learn by reading, doing, and watching. So biggest thing was like then after becoming a horseback riding instructor at the next job I took on, which was in Chicago, I was working at another lesson barn, and that's what I kind of presented to them. I was like, hey, I've been teaching as a lesson instructor for about 1.5 years. I really want to continue doing this, but I'm hungry for more knowledge. I learned a whole lot at that barn. It wasn't perfect by any means. I was teaching lessons. It was super chaotic. I learned how to build my own schedule as a lesson instructor. Prior at the old barn that I used to teach at, where I first started working, all the lessons were scheduled for me and I didn't have to contact clients at all. So it was all kind of done by this second party, which was really nice because there was a limited amount of stress I had about scheduling. But then when I came to this other job, I was really a private instructor working under a school. So to learn how to manage your time and how to communicate with clients and just take care of horse assignments and all that jazz was a really important aspect of my job in the second position that I had in the horse industry. And I learned a whole lot about horse care there. We had horses going lame all the time. This will be for another YouTube video eventually. It was not the greatest place to work, and the conditions at the barn were not ideal for horses. So I didn't stick around very long then. I stayed there for about 1.5 years as well. So now I'm 3 years into the horse industry, and I'm kind of like, oh, I need a change. Like, I need a refreshment. Really burnt out and tired of the barn that I was working at. So I left that position and I moved to Virginia for, originally it was supposed to be for the summer. And I got a position working as a summer intern at a show barn. I never really showed myself in my personal riding. Again, it was always for fun. I didn't really want to get into that aspect because it was just very expensive, and my family, while we had enough money to give me horseback riding lessons, did not have that much money for showing. So I just personally did not have that much information or understanding of horse shows. Going to this barn, I learned a whole lot over the summer. I would travel to A-rated shows and just schooling shows with a lot of the clients and with the barn manager and the owner. And so in that aspect, I learned a lot about grooming. So it kind of just snowballs as you move different barns or work for different people. You learn a lot. And I think that's what I'm trying to get at. But you learn a lot about how to do things and how to do things many different ways, because not everyone does the same thing the exact same way. So I guess this kind of bleeds into our next topic of richness in the horse industry, which is connections. The horse industry, like I said before, is such a small, tight-knit community of people who have been doing it all their life. There's no room for BS or for rudeness or just a lack of understanding of how to get around in the industry. My advice for this is just be careful when you work in the horse industry. Things spread. Don't be like, but don't be a drama queen in the horse industry. It's just not a good look. Like, people are not gonna like you, and they may smile and greet you with this like a nice face, but chances are you're not gonna get a job in the future if you're being an absolute asshole. Be pleasant, communicate clearly about things, and be respectful. It's just it gets you so far in the industry, and really it really benefits you for the future. Here's a good example for you guys. So the barn that I grew up riding at was located in Buffalo, New York, and the owner, she went to Syracuse University and was on the riding team, very influential person in the horse industry. But I didn't know it went further than New York State. I thought she was just very influential in New York State. But then when I came to my job in Virginia, working at the show barn, one of the lesson instructors there happened to go to college with her and was on the same riding team as her. So knew her for years and was in a different state. And that's just because, again, people relocate and move. So I don't really know what I was thinking. I was laughing to myself, and I actually contacted my lesson instructor and was like, oh my God, I just met so-and-so. She said you guys went to college together. She said hi. And it was kind of like this really like wholesome, cool moment of like just understanding that like small fucking world, which is great and wonderful, and it also is really awful at the same time. But I thought it was really cool. So yeah. The same thing with like sales, right? So if you are a really bad salesman and you're super pushy and rude, chances are someone's not going to refer you to another client. They're going to be like, okay, this shit is annoying. Why am I dealing with this person? I'm not going to subject someone to dealing with this horrible human, right? So think of it as you're kind of selling yourself, right? You want to be like respectful and understanding and communicative to clients. Maybe your peer right now, like working the same job as you are, but you never know down the road where they're going to be in their career, in their life. So it's just important to, you know, just be civil. And the last piece of advice for how to strike it rich in the horse industry is the love of the sports and the love of the horses. Period. Period! Period! I think that is like the most important thing above all else to make you feel rich or to be rich in the horse industry. A lot of people you see who are professionals kind of have a disdain towards the sport, or they lose interest or get burnt out with the industry. And I think a lot of that has to do with they've lost the love for the sport. That it's kind of like a double-edged sword, because I don't necessarily think it is 100% the industry's fault, but I also don't 100% think that it's not the horse industry. There's a lot of toxicity in the horse industry. I mean, I'm sure you've heard of it. If you are involved, you've witnessed it, you've seen it. Things are not great. I think above all else, to feel like you're doing something, just remember why you're doing it. You're doing it because you love the sport. You're doing it because you love the horses, right? Remember why you started doing it. It wasn't for the money, was it? Or if it was for the money, you're going to learn quickly that there's not really that much money in the horse industry. And your love for the horses, and when you feel absolutely burnt out and exhausted, try to remind yourself again why you started doing this. Because I think when you feel absolutely burnt out, like you just don't want to fucking do anything anymore, and you just want to quit and not ride and not do anything, I think remind yourself and advocate for yourself, right? Like if you're in a lesson and your instructor's pushing you to show and that's not bringing you joy or happiness, I think just say, hey, I'm doing this for fun. This is exactly what I want to do. I don't want to show. I think that is really important really, really important, is just remember the love for the horses. So now let's talk about actual richness, monetary richness in the horse industry. So with all those things that we just talked about, so knowledge, the love for the sport and the horses, and your connections, there's a chance that you can make some money with these things that you have. The connections, you're going to be able to find a job. If you have the knowledge of doing something and you've been doing it for a long time and you feel very skillful in it, you can make the connections. If you have the love for the sport and the horses, chances are you're going to meet people like you who are also going to have love for the horses and the sport, and who may be able to offer you more knowledge. So these things kind of create like a Venn diagram per se, right? Like they overlap and they kind of build to this richness of understanding things, and there's a chance that you can strike it rich in the horse industry. Okay, the more knowledge and the more skills you have and how skillful you are and the more connections you have, the bigger chance of you landing a really wonderful job working with horses and working with people who understand what you have to offer. So the more money you're going to make. Not that many opportunities for full-time work in the horse industry with insurance. There's some, I would say they're like a needle in a haystack, and chances are it's a lot of work for pay that should be probably more. And like obviously people offer what they can to their employees and it's understandable, but there are a few bad apples out there who kind of shortchange their employees and really try to give out less than they have to. If you want to make money, I think you need to find the right people to work for, one, and two, get your knowledge built up, because that's going to help you significantly to find a job. Let's say you've been working in the show industry for a while, like as a groom, right? And you've been grooming and you're not making as much money, or you don't feel like you're meeting your full potential and you feel like you've stopped learning stuff. I think it's time for a change. Provided that your finances aren't bad and you can take a risk, I would say look for other sources of income in the horse industry that would help you to learn more about your trade, right? So let's say you've worked as a groom for a while, you're braiding and stuff and like brushing the horse for the show so they go into the ring looking fabulous, right? Now let's say you don't know that much about clipping horses, right? Like body clipping. I'm sure you do if you're a groom, but just use this as an example. I get into body clipping horses on the side, in addition to this full-time job you have going to shows and traveling, right? And you just need some more downtime. I would say on the weekend, if you have your own horse or a friend's horse or someone you know who is willing to let you do it for free, ask to body clip their horse and learn how to do it. Or if you know someone who is very highly skillful at body clipping, watch them, like do an audit with them so that they can explain what they're doing in front of you and teach you how to do it while they're watching. And with enough time and practice, I feel like then that's another service you could offer. You know, if you're doing grooming at shows, let's say a horse needs a full body clip before a show, you could offer that as a service for your business. So again, that just goes back to like gaining more knowledge, or kind of using my example of what I was doing prior. I was doing horseback riding, like teaching lessons and stuff. And then the second barn I worked at, they asked me to do, like to call it vet care work. I'm not a vet. I don't have any, formal education on it. But I learned a lot about medications and emergency services that you have to offer to horses who are colicking or life-altering injury, and what to do in those circumstances. Employer is going to look at you and be like, okay, you know what to do if there's an emergency, right? And then you put that on your skill set. You're like able to handle adversity, which is important in the horse industry. Say that, then people are going to be like, okay, this person can handle the stress and the responsibility of caring for these animals because they have dealt with it before. And I guess they're going to trust you more if you have a love for the sport and for the animals. That always is number one, the love for the horses. I think if you're doing anything in the horse industry, please have a love for the horses. Like, they're the only reason that this sport exists, is because they're here and they're magnificent and wonderful creatures. So have respect for them and it'll come back to you in tenfold. It really will. Another piece of advice is if you financially want to make a career out of this, I would consider, so let's say you have the love for the animals, but you don't have the connections, but you have the skills. Let's say the person at this barn that you just met or you applied to this job is offering you, like, let's say $10 per group lesson, which is extremely low, I think, in the country. You do $10 an hour and you have to work 5 hours. You could take the job, or you could decline it and say, hey, I'm going to look for another job because I've been doing this for a while. Or you could take the job. So this is like kind of like barter and banter a little bit, right? So if they can't financially offer you what you deserve, maybe think of how you can get some more out of this situation, right? Like if you're sacrificing a certain amount of money on your paycheck, maybe be like, okay, yes, I accept this, but respectfully say, hey, like, is there any way you can teach me more about X, Y, and Z? Are there any like riding opportunities for me? I want to advance my riding career. And that's just one way of becoming not financially successful necessarily, but it will help build your resume and your career a little bit as you go. So personally, what I do and what I've done after working as an assistant barn manager when I was working 6 days a week, crazy long hours, and I was only making $2,400 a month, which seems like a lot of money, but it really isn't, all things considered. Like if I gave you the breakdown of all the stuff that I was doing and stuff, you'd be like, holy shit, that's not enough money. And I had no health insurance included in that. So again, very grateful for the position because I learned a significant amount. So I feel like what I lacked for in finances, I also made up for in my knowledge building. So after being burnt out with that and realizing I had no time to make any additional income because I just didn't have time or the energy for another job, I kind of took a step back from the horse industry for a while. And I realized that one of the ways to make better money in the horse industry is to do multiple different sources of income. What I do is I teach on the weekends at one barn. So I teach horseback riding to kids, I do group lessons, private lessons, all that kind of thing. And for private individuals, I'll do training or exercise rides. And then in addition to that, which is a third job, I do body clipping because I'm a really skilled body clipper and groomer. I have my own business in body clipping and grooming. So I'm fortunate enough to kind of pick and choose how much I charge people based on what I think my skills are worth. And a lot of people are very positive with my prices because I don't try to like scam people. I'm not like, hey, I need $400 to body clip your horse, because that is one, absolutely atrocious, and two, I know that I can always learn more. So, and I'd rather make the connection than lose the client. You know what I mean? Like someone might be willing, if they're in a pinch, to pay $400 for a full body clip, and the work might be pretty fucking good, but if you're rude about it and you're like, they can tell that you're there for the money and not for them and the connection, chances are you're not going to get that client back. They're probably going to find someone else who charges a little bit less but is also more personable. Owning your own business is cool, but I charge a little bit less because I rather have the repeated customer than someone who's a little sour that they paid a little bit too much money for a clip. I want people to come back, and that's an investment long term, because if you have loyal customers like I do, like I have loyal customers now that come back to me every month, every year, it builds up income slowly, and chances are they're going to refer you to other people because they were impressed or excited about your services. And I feel like because I have 3 separate jobs in the horse industry, including another job that I do not at all related in the horse industry, I think it helps me because it keeps things interesting and fresh, so I don't really get burnt out as quickly as I did when I was a full-time worker in the horse industry. I get the same amount of hours, I work slightly less, but I make more money than I did when I was working that amount of time. Way of kind of getting more knowledge, this is like something that I also thought about and considered. Another way of like maybe making more money for yourself in the future is to invest in yourself and your education, right? If you spend money on a clinic, chances are you may ride better after, or you may have a better understanding of how to teach things to your students, even if you're an instructor. Invest in good equipment. If you have better body clippers, you're going to make more money because your clip is cleaner. So you got to really consider investing in yourself and into how this is going to work out for you in the future. So I think that wraps up what I had to say about striking it rich in the horse industry. So if you guys have any other remaining questions or concerns or things you want to add to what I said in this video, please feel free to leave comments down in the comment section. I do read every single one of them. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time on the next conversation we have about the horses, the horse industry, and the people. So thanks so much for watching again. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.